In the biz, we call this a cold open because it comes right before the intro video. And it's ironic because I am battling a cold right now, so apologies for a nasally voice. But before we talk about Drake Maye and a potential trade-up for the Falcons, make sure to subscribe to the channel. We are closing in on our free agency subscriber goal. We are less than 100 subs away, so if you have not joined the channel yet, this is your reminder to go ahead and do so. Are the Falcons trading up for a quarterback? We got some rumors to talk about on today's show as the NFL Combine is about to get underway in Indianapolis, and that's usually, at least in my eyes, the true kickoff to NFL offseason rumors because all the GMs and the head coaches, they get together, they go to some Indianapolis steakhouses, they have some old fashions, and they write down some ideas on napkins that sometimes make their way to reporters. But we did get an interesting, I don't want to say report, because I think that's way too strong of a word, but let's call it a rumor. I think that's what it is, a rumor from Cam Marino, who works at NFL Draft Buzz as their lead writer, and he talked about the Falcons trading up. And here's what he said. Okay, let me just make this concrete. Here's how I see it as of today. Atlanta wants to trade up. They know, as does everybody else, that the cost of moving up will be very expensive. UNC QB Drake Maye has the apple of their eye, though Terry Fontenot has deep intel on Jayden Daniels. Now, this was over Twitter, and I'm going to pause on that and just bring it back to me for a moment and say this. Who does not Dan Marino, but Cam Marino have intel with? Like, I'm not sure. He's got 5,000 followers on Twitter, and I know that's not a great way to measure whether or not someone's a great journalist or not. It's Twitter, for crying out loud. But at some point, I do kind of wonder, like, who does this NFL Draft Buzz lead writer know in Flowery Branch that leads him to believe that Atlanta wants to trade up? Like, for all we know, which we don't know a whole lot since I'm not Terry Fontenot or Raheem Morris, the Falcons could be very content with staying at 8 and trading for Justin Fields or signing Russell Wilson. So I'm going to just going to tap the brakes a little bit on concrete Atlanta wants to move up. All right, more from Marino. If they don't believe they'll be able to trade up after gauging the market, then they'll sign a competitive bridge quarterback like Russ Wilson and put themselves in play for a QB in the 2025 draft. My prediction on February 23rd, Atlanta overpays to move into the top 3 for Drake Maye. Now, something that I found interesting that Mr. Marino did not include, which was no mention of a Justin Fields trade, right? His plan B that he outlined for the Falcons was a Russell Wilson, play it safe, infield single, get ready for 2025, which from everyone I've talked to, the 2025 QB class is not stacking up very nicely. So if you are thinking of pausing on quarterback and resetting for 2025, this is not a good time to do that. And I'm also thinking about, what have the Atlanta Falcons done the last few years? They have played it safe. The Marcus Mariota signing was not a signing to put the Atlanta Falcons back on the map. Trotting out Desmond Ridder, your third-round pick for 2023, was not a move to put the Atlanta Falcons back on the map. For a team that was one of 2 teams that did not play a single primetime game last year, and Arthur Blank is getting up there in the age column and was so frustrated with the lack of progress offensively, he fired Arthur Smith. Despite being an Arthur Smith guy not long before he fired him, do you really feel like they're going to go into 2024 with an infield single move like Russell Wilson? And I think Russell Wilson can do a good job with Atlanta. I think he can get to maybe the 9-10 wins, maybe sneak into the playoffs. Does anyone feel like that's going to be the thing that pushes them over the top? No. So I don't buy into it's going to be a plan B is let's play it safe kind of move. I think Atlanta's going to be thinking big here. Now, trading for Justin Fields is a much bigger risk than if you can't move up to get Drake Maye, let's sign Russell Wilson. Like, let's say the Falcons come out of the combine going, all right, either the top 3 teams want to stay in the top 3, or we don't feel comfortable with offering what they want to make that type of trade. And so for whatever reason, Atlanta knows we're not getting one of the top 3 quarterbacks. So now they set their sights on Kirk Cousins, Justin Fields, or Russell Wilson, right? It's like Papa Bear, Mama Bear, Baby Bear in terms of price. Kirk Cousins is the most expensive. Justin Fields, the second most expensive, just simply because his contract is going to be bigger than Russell Wilson's, and you have to trade for him compared to Russell Wilson being the Baby Bear, which is he's going to sign for a vet minimum deal because whatever he makes on the next team, that is subtracted from what the Broncos owe him. So he's going to want to stick Denver with the biggest bill possible. And if you do make a move for Justin Fields and it doesn't work out, it's not going to set you back as a franchise, but it will likely lead to some people losing their jobs. Like, that's just what happens. Go look at Carolina. Made a move for Sam Darnold, didn't work out. Not the same people there anymore. So if you go for Russell Wilson and it doesn't work out, I don't think anyone's going to have such a huge bar, high bar for what the expectations were for Russell Wilson. If you sign Russell Wilson, it doesn't work out, you sign him to a cheap one-year deal. Like, that's not going to make or break the Atlanta Falcons' future. And neither will Justin Fields, but that's going to be a move that generates a lot more attention. And if it doesn't work out, you're the GM that traded for Fields and it didn't work. So if Atlanta wants to live on the wild side, go trade for Justin Fields. I think his ceiling is much higher for the Falcons than Russell Wilson. But if you want to play it safe, Russ is your guy. So pick a quarterback for me. Would you rather trade for Justin Fields, knowing what it costs to get him, or sign Russell Wilson knowing it's going to be a $1.5 million contract, and that's going to be the greatest value you're going to get for a starting quarterback compared to it's almost like Brock Purdy level value, even not quite as good because he's getting paid even less, but just pound for pound, dollar for touchdowns. You can't go wrong with Russell Wilson. But if you really want to think big for a franchise, Justin Fields is that splashy move, and that's the one I would make. Now, speaking of Justin Fields, I want to circle on to this article from Peter King, right? Longtime NBC Sports writer who announced his retirement today. And in his retirement article, which was very lengthy, he made some predictions. And this was one of them. I suppose the Bears are going to trade the top pick. I know nothing, but that seems to be the way the wind is blowing. What I say, the Bears could keep Justin Fields, and should, and trade the first pick down once or twice, and build the kind of supporting cast a team needs to contend. Suppose GM Ryan Poles traded the top pick down one spot to Washington, which would take Caleb Williams, and got the second pick, a second-round pick, and a 2025 first-round pick in return. Then suppose Poles traded the second pick to Atlanta at 8, and the Falcons picked one of the other quarterbacks. To me, I read this not as Peter King projecting this is what happens, because he opened up by saying, I know nothing, but this is what Peter King would do if he was in charge versus what he's hearing. Now, if I'm playing devil's advocate with myself here, I'm Peter King, and I'm writing a farewell article. Do you want your last article to have a wild idea that may never come to fruition? Or do you want to go out shooting your shot? And if you're right, you can say, my last article, I predicted a blockbuster trade based on what I was loosely hearing. So you can have a little bit of give and take on both sides of the argument there, but I still feel like this is Peter King doing, if I was in charge, this is what I would do, versus I've got some whisperings going around here because everyone else in the NFL media circle says the Bears are keeping the first overall pick and they're taking Caleb Williams. So I got 10 people that are wrong and Peter King is right, or one person that's wrong and everyone else is right. I'm going to side with the majority on this one. I also think that Washington and Chicago are both staying put. This is what we do in the offseason. We get bored. We want football to come back. So, media members kind of start stirring the pot a little bit and tossing out some fun, juicy ideas. And listen, I'm victim to it. You're victim to it right now about this could happen in the offseason. And a lot of times, crazy stuff does happen. I'm not saying this never happens, right? A.J. Brown got traded during the middle of the draft, and no one saw that coming. The 49ers pulled off a blockbuster deal to move up and get Trey Lance. This stuff does happen all the time. But I do think that when it comes to the draft, there is usually a little bit more smoke than needed. because it's all the way in April, and the NFL does an amazing job every year of marketing itself, and they always make sure that no matter what sport is in season, the NFL is still number one. NBA playoffs, go fuck yourself. It's the NFL draft. That's what Roger Goodell does. So, Peter King had this trade idea. Falcons get the second overall pick from the Bears after Chicago moved back with Washington. And in exchange from going from 8 to 2, the Falcons give up 2024 second round pick, number 43 overall, and a 2025 first and second. So we're talking a future first and 2 second rounders for swapping first round picks this year, going from 8 to 2, which is not very far off from what Chicago got last offseason when Carolina went from 9 to 1. So a little bit closer going from 8 to 2 versus 9 to 1. But this seems relatively accurate. Maybe it doesn't take 2 seconds, but that's, we're splitting hairs here when it comes to pulling off a deal from 8 to 2 if a second rounder is really going to get in the way of this. So would you do this trade idea that Peter King proposed, where Washington goes up to number 1, they take Caleb Williams, and Atlanta goes from 8 to 2 so they can pick Drake Maye or Jayden Daniels, whichever quarterback of their choice? Let me know down below in the comment section. For me, I would do it. And I'm a history guy, and I love my history, but I would do it. And I'll tell you why in just a second. But first, I want to share with you guys some awesome information about our sponsor today, which is Prize Picks. We all know that football season is over, but the action on the floor is heating up. And Prize Picks, the largest daily fantasy sports platform in North America, has the Dirty Birds covered. Because instead of battling thousands of other players, including pros and sharks, you pick more than or less than on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. Prize Picks even offers one of my favorite features, which is injury insurance, so that your entries stay in play even if one of your players gets injured. For basketball games, if you have a player who exits the game in the first half and does not return in the second, that player projection won't count against you, and the rest of your entry stays alive. So make sure you download the app today and use code CLNS for a first-time deposit match up to $100. Now, personally, I'm a big baseball fan, so if you're a Braves fan or if you're a baseball fan for whatever your local team is, ride with me on my Prize Picks selection for the 2024 MLB season. I like the more on Mookie Betts here, and I'm also just going to take the less on Manny Machado because I feel like the Padres are in for a big regression year without maybe Snell coming back there to San Diego. So make sure you download the app today or go to prizepicks.com/CLNS and use code CLNS for a first-time deposit match up to $100. That's Prize Picks. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy. All that information is in the comments and description of today's video. Now, like I was saying earlier, I would do that trade if it truly was on the table. Go from 8 to 2 and get Drake Maye or Jayden Daniels. Now, as a student of history, I would say I'm dumb for saying that because it's never really worked, right? Bryce Young moving up, the Panthers moving up to get Bryce Young, that's something I'm sure Carolina would hit the undo button if they could. Didn't work for Trey Lance and the 49ers. If Jared Goff is the best example of it working out, that's not saying a whole lot. They did go to a Super Bowl, so I'm not going to completely say it was an awful deal, but man, you got to wonder if the Rams would do that again if they had the opportunity to undo it all. Didn't work for Carson Wentz, didn't work for RG3 and the Redskins, although that one I think is more on the Redskins putting RG3 back out there after he tore his ACL in January. So there are some famous trades up going in the top 3 that haven't worked out, but there are also some great examples of teams identifying a quarterback, trading up for that quarterback, and it working out beautifully. Do you think the Buffalo Bills just sat on their hands and like, oh, this Wyoming guy's pretty good, let's take him? No, they identified him and they moved up. They struck a deal with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Now, it's not the same. You're not going from 8 to 2. You're going from 12 to 7, so it cost a whole lot less. So if it didn't work out for Buffalo, they'd only be out 2 second-round picks pretty much and a first-round pick swap. But how about the Kansas City Chiefs? They took a big swing. They went from 27 to 10. And I don't think people remember that Buffalo was the team that made this happen. And now they're the ones that have to live with Patrick Mahomes being on the Chiefs. So they got a future third and a first-round pick out of that deal. So there are good examples of teams going, that's our guy, let's go get him. And I guarantee you that if you call Buffalo and Kansas City and said, hey, would you do that trade again? And on top of what you gave that team already, toss in an extra first, they would do it 10 times out of 10. So if you feel like one of these guys is the next, I shouldn't say Patrick Mahomes or Josh Allen, like type of quarterback. I just mean like a franchise, stable quarterback that you believe is going to be there for 10-plus seasons. Yeah, F them picks. Go get your guy. Now here's the real curveball that I don't feel like people are talking about enough. It's New England at pick number 3. Because I truly believe that the Bears and the Commanders are going to go quarterback. And they don't want to leave their spots. But the Patriots, what if they come out of the combine going, we're not sold on Jayden Daniels or Drake Maye. And we don't feel like we're going to get great value at the 3rd overall pick. And another team might be sold on that last quarterback in the top 3. And they'll give us an incredible offer that we can't refuse. So some people think the Patriots are going to go Marvin Harrison Jr. at number 3. And if that's the case, if the Patriots truly are open to going wide receiver at number 3, well, then I wonder, what if the Patriots are open to shopping the 3rd overall pick, knowing we could get a whole lot more and still get a really good wide receiver? So here's my trade idea. I think it's got more legs than Peter King's, which is quarterbacks go 1 and 2. Falcons call New England and go, we know you don't want a quarterback. Marvin Harrison's a great pick at number 3. But you could fall back 5 spots, pick up a future first-round pick, have 2 firsts in 2025 so that you can go get Shedeur Sanders if you want to, and you can still get one hell of a wide receiver because there are people that think Marvin Harrison Jr. might not even be the number 1 wide receiver in this draft class. So what about this hypothetical situation where Atlanta and New England strike a deal? And the Falcons move up, and they get Drake Maye at number 3 because I've seen Mel Kiper keep saying Jayden Daniels will go number 2 to the Commanders. And then the Cardinals go Marvin Harrison at number 4 for Kyler Murray. The Chargers invest in Justin Herbert by protecting him since he got injured last year, and they go the best tackle in this draft class. The Giants, they've got an expensive quarterback in Daniel Jones. They may decide to invest in their offensive line and go with a new offensive tackle in Olu Fashanu. The Titans may decide to take Brock Bowers since they don't really have a tight end, and they've got Hopkins and Treylon Burks. And now the Patriots at number 8 go, wait a minute. We moved back from 3 to 8. We're still getting either Malik Neighbors or Rome Odunze, so one of the 3 top wide receivers in this draft class, and we're picking up a future first-round pick. That may be a deal that feels like a win-win. Atlanta gets the quarterback they are looking for. New England gets 1 of the 3 top wide receivers when you can make an argument for all 3 of these top wide receivers being the top guys in this draft class, and they pick up a future first-round pick for their troubles. Who says no? Maybe the Patriots because they want to go QB at 3, but if they don't, this seems like a really good opportunity for Atlanta to move up. Ultimately, checking after the combine. I've been saying this for weeks now, and I know it's probably not good for my viewership, but check in after the combine for a much better idea as to who's going to go where, and maybe more importantly, what teams want to do. Are any of the teams in the top 3 interested in moving out? If the answer is no, I got bad news for a lot of teams in the draft that are looking for quarterbacks. They're not going to find one of the top 3 because the top 3 teams aren't moving out. Now, we have spent a lot of time today talking about whether or not the Falcons could move up. We got to talk about whether that's worth moving up. Is Drake Maye worth moving up for, right? Is this a guy you believe is worth giving up the farm system potentially for, like in Peter King's trade idea, or a first-round pick swap and a future first with the New England Patriots? And honestly, that's probably a little bit too light. Personally, I'm all in on Drake Maye. Full send on moving up to get Drake Maye. I think he is a Pro Bowl caliber quarterback. If he was entering the draft last year or next year, he would have been the first overall pick in the draft. But because it's a draft class with Caleb Williams, there is some talk about, if he's not going to be first, maybe we could see some other wide receivers pass him up. No, Drake Maye is the real deal. I'm all in on him. I have full permission for the Atlanta Falcons to strike a deal and move up to get him if that opportunity presents itself. But let me know, would you trade up for a quarterback? Do you think this is a class worthy of giving up future assets for? Or would you just stay at 8? Take a Malik Neighbors, take a Rome Odunze, take a Dallas Turner. Nothing wrong with that. But ultimately, if you don't have the right guy driving the ship, it doesn't matter. You got to have the quarterback in this day and age. All right, I've taken up way too much of your time, and you guys are probably sick and tired of listening to my nasally, sick, cold voice. So hopefully I'm feeling better tomorrow. That way I'm not ruining everyone's eardrums. We're going to sign off, though, and catch up with you all later.